We set up a little free library box on our curb. A way to share books. The first week, every book was taken, refilled, gone again. Then one night, we saw her, our neighbor, dumping the entire box into a garbage bag. I asked why. She said, "Reading's a privilege. You can't force it on the illiterate." Days later, we found a dozen books burned behind her fence. But the twist? One of them was a signed first edition, gifted to my son by his late grandpa. When I told her, she laughed and said, "He should have held on tighter." We live on a quiet street in Bellingham, Washington. It's the kind of neighborhood where people mow each other's lawns when someone's sick, where Christmas lights stay up too long, and where the local Facebook group mostly argues about dog poop or noisy leaf blowers. My wife, Sarah, and I are both middle school teachers. She teaches English, I teach history. We've always loved books, our house is full of them. And our son, Jordan, caught the reading bug early. He's 12 now. Quiet kid. Always has his nose in a book, even when the other kids are running around outside. I know that makes him seem odd to some people, but we're proud of who he is. Last year, Sarah's dad passed away. His name was Rick. Jordan was close to him, closer than to most adults. Rick was one of those grandpas who actually paid attention. He'd take Jordan to the used bookstore downtown and let him pick out whatever he wanted. Before he died, he gave Jordan something really special, a signed first edition of Where the Red Fern Grows. Rick had underlined parts and wrote little notes in the margins. You could tell he read it just for Jordan. Jordan kept that book on his nightstand. Always. It wasn't just a book. It was a link to his grandpa. So this spring, we put up a little free library on our curb. You've probably seen them, those little wooden boxes with glass doors, full of books for people to take or leave. We thought it would be a nice way to share, especially since some families around here don't have money for books, and the nearest library's over 2 miles away. We built the box ourselves. Painted it light blue, added a weather seal, wrote, "Take a book, leave a book," in big, friendly letters on the side. We filled it with all kinds of stuff, kids' books, mysteries, even a few bestsellers we were done with. The first week, the books disappeared fast. We were happy. We thought, great. People are reading. This is working. We refilled it. Gone again the next day. But by the end of the first month, something felt wrong. No one ever left anything. The books just vanished. No turnover, no replacements. We never saw anyone come up to browse. And I'm home most days before 4. So one night, I stayed up late. Around 11, I was in the living room reading when I saw someone out the window. A woman. Medium height. Wearing a long, floppy shawl and dragging a black trash bag. She walked straight up to the box, opened the door, and scooped every single book inside into her bag. She didn't even look at the titles. Then she turned and walked right back across the street, into the yellow house with the chipped shutters. That's when I knew. Patrice. We never really talked to her. She's in her 50s. Retired maybe? Lives alone. We waved sometimes. She kept to herself. Kind of odd but never caused trouble. I stepped outside and followed her across the street. Called out, "Hey!" She turned, totally calm. Didn't even look surprised. "Why are you taking all the books?" I asked. She blinked like I'd asked something stupid. Then she said, clear as day, "Reading's a privilege. You can't force it on the illiterate." And just like that, she turned and went inside. I just stood there. I couldn't believe it. The next morning, Sarah and I talked. We decided not to say anything else. Maybe she was having a hard time. Maybe she needed help. We didn't want to start a war with a neighbor. But a few days later, I was walking our dog behind her backyard fence. There's a small wooded patch back there. I smelled something burnt. Something off. I peeked over her fence. There was a pile of ashes behind her shed. Half-burned books. Pages curled up, blackened edges. I recognized a few titles we'd put in the box. The Outsiders. Charlotte's Web. A mystery novel Sarah had finished just last month. And then I saw it. Or what was left of it. Where the Red Fern Grows. The cover was melted in one corner, but still attached. The spine was broken. Most of the pages were burned through. But one corner, the bottom left, was still visible. Rick's signature. I climbed over the fence without thinking. Grabbed it out of the ashes with my sleeve. My hands were shaking. When I got home, I showed Sarah. She broke down. We had never told anyone it was in the box. We had kept it in there for just one night. Jordan wanted to show it off and leave it for a day to share Grandpa's favorite story. He thought people would read it and love it like he did. Instead, Patrice burned it. The next morning, I knocked on her door. She opened it slowly, like she was expecting me. I held up what was left of the book. "This was signed," I said, "by my son's grandfather. He died last year. This was his last gift to him." She looked at it for a second. Then right at me. Smirked. "He should have held on tighter." And she closed the door. That was it. She didn't care. Didn't even flinch. Something inside me snapped that day. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to hit her. That would have been too easy. No. I wanted her to feel what my son felt when he saw that burned book. What my wife felt when she saw her father's signature half burned away. I wanted her to lose something that mattered. So I made a plan. I didn't tell Sarah what I was going to do. Not right away. She wouldn't have stopped me, but I think she needed to believe we were better than that. At least for a little while. I started small. I knew Patrice was obsessed with her front garden. You know the type: rows of perfectly trimmed lavender, tiny white fencing around her beds, ceramic gnomes she'd arranged by size. She was out there every other day with gloves and a sprayer. She even talked to her roses, for God's sake. They were her pride and joy. So one night, I waited until just after midnight. I wore gloves. Hood up. I dumped a gallon of vinegar and salt into her flower beds. Not enough to be obvious right away. Just enough to poison the soil deep down. It took a week. But one morning, I saw her out there, standing over her garden with a look on her face like someone had just told her dog died. The lavender was drooping. Leaves curling. A slow death. She started replanting almost immediately. Bought new soil. New mulch. She must have spent hundreds. So I hit her again. A few nights later, I snuck over and mixed powdered bleach into her watering can. Everything turned yellow in days. She must have suspected something. I saw her looking across the street more often. Saw her watching our house. But she never came over. Never said a word. Next, I went after her car. It was an old white Lexus. She'd had it forever. Kept it spotless. Waxed it every Sunday. Always parked it in the exact same spot at the edge of her driveway. I waited for the right moment. One evening after dinner, I walked by with my dog. Gloves in my pocket. I had a little tube of epoxy with me. I squatted down behind her rear tire, pretending to tie my shoe, and filled her muffler with it. She didn't notice until the next morning when she tried to start the car. Nothing. Wouldn't even turn over. I watched from my living room window as she paced back and forth on her porch, yelling into her phone. Tow truck came that afternoon. Still, she didn't say a word. But that night, I noticed something. My garbage can was tipped over. Trash scattered. At first, I thought maybe it was a raccoon. But then I saw it, scratches on the side of my car. Deep. Purposeful. She knew. We were in a silent war now. And that's when things started to turn. A few days later, I came home to find the little free library torn off its post. Just gone. Ripped from the ground. Splinters everywhere. Like someone had taken an axe to it. Jordan saw it before I could stop him. He didn't cry. He just stared at the empty spot like he couldn't understand what he was looking at. That was the night Sarah found out everything. I told her. Everything I'd done. The flowers. The car. The epoxy. She just sat there for a long time, then finally said, "She's not going to stop, is she?" "No," I said. "She won't." So we decided to end it. We knew she volunteered every Wednesday at the community center. It was the one thing she talked about on the rare occasions she did talk. Some literacy project, which, the irony of that didn't escape me. She acted like she was saving the world. That center meant everything to her. So we got to work. We started digging. A few emails, a few calls to folks who'd worked there. It turns out, she had a history. She wasn't a social worker. She wasn't even retired. She'd been asked to leave her last 3 volunteer posts. One after a verbal fight with a teenage girl. One after she told a struggling single mom to stop reading and start reading. Charming. We gathered it all. Records. Emails. Statements. Then we printed everything out and anonymously mailed it to the board of the center, along with a handwritten letter that read, "Would you trust this woman with your children?" She was fired the next week. The same day, I saw her walk outside and just sit on her porch for hours. Not moving. Just staring. Like something in her had finally broken. And still, I wasn't done. After the firing, she started to unravel. Patrice stopped tending her garden completely. The dead lavender turned to brittle gray sticks. The grass went brown. The gnomes, once so neatly arranged, were scattered and dirty, like they'd been kicked over in a storm. I saw her out there once, barefoot, in her robe, just standing in the yard staring at nothing. She looked smaller. Like she was sinking into herself. But I knew better than to think it was over. Someone like her doesn't just give up. So we waited. About a week later, we got a letter taped to our front door. No stamp, no envelope. Just a single sheet of paper that read, "Your son is too soft. You're raising a victim. Books won't save him." That was it. No name. But we didn't need one. Sarah read it in silence, then sat down at the kitchen table and said, "We hit her where it hurt. Now she wants to hit back." I was done playing defense. I started watching her closer. From inside the house. Every day. I kept a log of when she left, when she came back. What she carried. Who she talked to. I was going to know every inch of her life. And that's when I found her weak spot. One morning, I saw her load something into her trunk. Boxes. Labeled with masking tape. I watched through binoculars as she drove off. I followed her, not too close. She went to a small self-storage unit on the edge of town. Quiet. Out of the way. Later that week, when she left for groceries, I checked the address. Walked around the place like I was looking for my own unit. Took down the number on hers. I waited for another day when she was gone, and went back. No cameras on the building. Just a keypad. I found a small strip of tape stuck near the edge of the keypad, common trick. Some people leave their code hidden like that if they forget it. Hers was there. She made it too easy. I opened the door to her unit, and felt my jaw clench. It was like walking into a museum of her past life. Photos. Journals. Boxes of awards. Framed certificates from colleges and workshops. Newspaper clippings. Scrapbooks full of pages, all organized by year. One wall was covered in cork board where she'd pinned notes and ideas for a memoir, handwritten outlines, quotes, even a list of publishers. That's when I realized this was her legacy. She had no family. No husband, no kids. That storage unit was her life story. Her proof that she mattered. That she'd lived a life worth remembering. I didn't destroy it. Not yet. Instead, I scanned every single thing. All of it. Then I locked it back up like nothing had happened. I went home and spent the next 2 weeks crafting a digital copy of her whole past. Carefully edited. Twisted. I wrote fake notes in her handwriting. Added journal entries that made her sound unstable, cruel, bigoted. I rewrote sections of her memoir outline so that it looked like she was glorifying abusive behavior. And then, I started sending it out. To local writing groups. Publishers. Even the church down the street where she used to volunteer. All anonymously. Within a month, she'd become a whisper. A cautionary tale. Her story was ruined before it even got told. She stopped leaving her house. Curtains closed. Mail piling up. Then one day, she vanished. Gone. No warning. I checked every day. Her car didn't move. Lights never came on. A week passed. 2. Then 3. Finally, a for sale sign went up on the lawn. She never came back. When the for sale sign went up, I felt nothing. No rush. No victory. Just quiet. The yellow house sat still for weeks. Dead garden. Broken porch light. Mail stuffed in the box until someone finally stopped delivery. Jordan asked about her once. "Did Patrice move away?" I looked at him and said, "Yeah. She won't be bothering anyone anymore." He nodded and went back to his book. Sarah didn't bring it up again either. But I could tell. She knew I'd done more than just scare Patrice off. She never asked how far I went. She didn't want to know. But there was a distance between us after that. Like we were still in the same room, just not standing together. I thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. About 2 months later, a letter showed up. No return address. Typed. Clean. Short. It read, "You've made your point. I've lost my job, my reputation, and my home. But you raised your son to love books. Now he'll know his father rewrote a woman's life just to destroy her. Be proud." There was no signature. But I knew it was her. I didn't show it to Sarah. I burned it. But something changed in me after that. Because she wasn't wrong. What I did, it wasn't just revenge. It was surgical. Cold. I didn't just fight back, I erased her. Every trace of who she was, good or bad, I twisted into something ugly. And I'd done it without blinking. Jordan found out more than a year later. He overheard me talking to a friend I thought I could trust. I didn't even notice he was standing behind the door. That night he asked me, "Did you ruin her life because of the book?" I told him yes. He didn't cry. He didn't get mad. He just nodded and said, "I don't think Grandpa would have liked that," and walked away. That hit me harder than anything Patrice ever said. Because the truth is, I started all of it to protect something Jordan loved. But I ended up showing him how fast love can rot into hate. I made her pay. She deserved some of it. Maybe even most of it. But I also showed my son that when someone hurts you, the only answer is to destroy them completely. And that's not what Rick would have wanted. That's not who I was before. So no, I don't regret what I did. But I do regret what it taught my son. In trying to protect his memories, I might have poisoned his future. And that's a price I'll never stop paying.